lived 2 blocks from the hospital and we couldn't get there because of the water. That's when we realized that we were in deep trouble.
Nobody knew where anybody was at, so It was a dramatic experience. You had no cell phones, to call anybody. You had, it was just crazy.
Went to the nursing home, not realizing how much damage water can do. And it amazed me how water can move pianos and organs out of a chapel into another room totally, like nothing.
It just got more severe and more severe, and then it became the blizzard and the snow and ice and all of that. Eventually the power would go out throughout the night, and then we came to what we now know as the flood of 1997.
The winter of 96-97 was the winter from hell, if you want to call it. We had a presidential declaration that winter for snowstorms because there was so much snow that you couldn't get it cleared, so then you ended up expending a lot of money so that there was a disaster called for that. Then you hit a nice early spring and the sun's out and it's melting and it's just going to beat the band. It was a beautiful day. We knew that there was problems coming because of the nice weather. It was melting fairly quickly. And then starting, I want to say it was Saturday mid-afternoon that it started to rain.
Went out to the tower site for the radio station and noticed that the water was building up, and there was more water on the way. As the day went on, it just got more severe and more severe.
I had been here in Ada, and then I went over to the west side of the county to talk to the folks there. And while I was there, then it started switching to a freezing rain. So then that got to be, the 5, 6 o'clock, maybe even 7 o'clock time frame, and I started driving back along 200 from Halstead. And you could see on the power lines that they were iced over severely, and then the term that they call it is galloping. The lines just start to move on their own, and they were starting to spark. And I called back to Greg Holmvik, who was the city emergency manager, and said, Greg, you better get prepared because you're going to lose power, because all their power come from the west. And so, as I got over here and hadn't been here more than a few minutes, and then all of a sudden, boom, then the power was gone. So you're coordinating with everybody, you think you're in good shape, and then, like I say, the weather changed, and then when it turned into a blizzard, well then now you can't see. And you have no electricity, so you're running off of lanterns, generators if you have. There weren't too many of them around. Car headlights, driving around the city was real spooky, because all the lights that you're used to seeing, you're used to the town always being lit up. Well, it isn't anymore. And so to even find the normal roads you take, you really had to concentrate.
If you look at a picture in the 97 yearbook, there's a tractor that was in the creek. My brother Jared was heading uptown because we had some livestock over at a neighbor's farm. This guy was trying to drive with his little Ford tractor to get to town. I don't know what happened. All that knows that Jared saw him, and the guy was crawling up to his tractor and brought him to safety in town, where he was rushed off by ambulance to the local hospital.
Well, the decision to evacuate was made by the city, not by the county. The city has jurisdiction.
I had a call from the police chief who indicated that he needed the buses to help evacuate certain areas of the city of Ada. So a number of the staff gathered together at the bus garage, and when you walk into the bus garage, the first thing you do is you press the button to open up the bus garage doors, and obviously there's no electricity. That compounded with the fact that the ice had frozen the doors down, and these doors are not a lightweight fiberglass or aluminum, they're heavy. And so several of us, had to chip away the ice and then push these doors open so we could get the buses out, and the bus drivers then went around and helped evacuate certain parts of the town.
When we were leaving my house, it was pitch dark, totally and utter pitch dark. And you could hear the ice water coming, and you closed your eye, and it was so cold. And it was the eeriest sound, and that when you looked down the street and you could see this ice creeping.
I remember that loading my wife and my daughter, my 2 dogs, in the back of one of those Army trucks. So I mean, that moment about getting on that truck and leaving your home, that's kind of a moment that's always etched in your mind, that, what are you going to come back to?
When the flood came through, I was at home, and I kept getting calls saying they're going to move the people, the residents of the nursing home. And I knew that it was a traumatic thing for them.
So by the time the school buses, the firemen and everything got there, by the time the last people were going out of the hospital, the firemen were knee-high in ice water.
And the nursing home residents had been moved out and evacuated out of the nursing home in Ada, and they went to Twin Valley, to the nursing home. And at the time, I think we had 49 at the max, but I don't remember if we were full or not. And so all those people were taken out of the nursing home into a surrounding that they didn't know what was happening for them, along with their not knowing if their families would know. And so that was a real traumatic thing for them.
Twin Valley Living Center Nursing Home gave their full resources to us to do that. Marcy, the nurse, said, "What can I do to help?" And I just gave her the records, and I said, "I'll tell you who's going where." She photocopied records, and we literally put their medications in garbage bags. Like, here's their records, here's their garbage bags. This person's getting on the bus.
They were able to get everybody out, school buses, ambulances, whatever it took, depending on where you came out of the hospital or whatever. And very trying times for the people. It's such a change, and you're doing it in the middle of the night, and you don't know what's going on. And, if you're old, it's tough on you.
And the nursing home in Twin Valley was very gracious to take them all in, and we had beds in the chapel over there. We had beds wherever we could get. But then the next step was to find permanent housing for them, because they couldn't stay there. And so we had nursing home residents in 8 or 9 different nursing homes in the area. So every week I traveled all those different nursing homes to see the people. And that was a highlight for them, to have their mail come, somebody familiar that could tell them what was going back at home in Ada, what was happening. And that was such a vital connection for them. So that was my job for 12, 13 months, whatever it was. And so did any of them come back? Very few. My job also was attending a lot of funerals.
For us, it started, the Saturday evening. The water started coming, filling in the barn, which we had a herd of pigs, sows and piglets, and the boys got the babies out into a trailer, backed it into the garage, and we saved what we could. The boys came in wet that night. I believe we still had electricity, so we moved all the furniture up to the dining room, kitchen area, and waited for morning, and that's when the blizzard really hit, and we saw substantial damage. Several days later, some of the cattle, fat cattle, ready for market, fell through the ice.
The fat cattle started as ABC came out and started to interview me, and that's when they started falling through the ice.
The ice must have been thin. They fell through, and then we had help from one of our neighbors who brought a chainsaw to help cut a trail to the ice to get to the dry ground. We had 3 cows that was saved, that survived, and about 6 or 5 of them were lost.
But the hogs, we had a feeder barn. Most of the ones out there were lost. And the north barn.
They're kind of frozen.
Early part of the next week after the flood had somewhat gone down in the community, we still had all kinds of ice chunks. The city had taken a road grader and bladed the ice off the roads by the school. And I can still recall Rod Grams, Senator Wellstone, as well as Colin Peterson walking into our school, our high school, and opening up the gym area, and you could see the wood floor on the gym just, like a wave of wheat because of the fact that the water had swelled up the wood to the point that it just popped up like spaghetti in that particular gym floor area. The whole building reeked, with mold already.
We had to figure out a way to take care of the K-12, which meant at the elementary school we were going to have to move over a little bit. I mean, we had to allow, some of the high school classes to be held at the elementary. The music programs had to be in there, the band, the choir, the Phi Ed classes had to all be there at K-12.
We were in short-term survival mode and trying to get through and make things as normal as possible for our kids. So the month of May, we still played about half of our baseball schedule. I was coaching baseball. We had our classroom activities, we did things, and we made it. Graduation that year for the class of '97 was in Borup. We were very fortunate. Prom was over in Mahnomen. I remember supervising prom in Mahnomen, and so we, like I said, we made it as normal as possible.
It was an interesting situation. I mean, we pulled it off. I think we did the best job possible, but it wasn't easy.
We were like that for about a year and a half. I believe it was then, a year and a half later, we actually moved in at the end of the first semester into the new high school, and then that spring we had graduation in the new high school, as well as in June we had the open house of the new school for the community. Representative Colin Peterson told me and a couple of board members in the Borup site. He said, "Don, you'll be amazed at what the federal government can do for you." And I thought that was somewhat political hogwash, in regard to the fact, because I'm looking at a high school that's it's a total disaster, and he's saying that I'll be amazed, And 2 years later, I was amazed because obviously I think that we ended up with a situation that was the best possible building that we could have ever hoped for, and that yet this was done over a period of about 2 years.
When the school went under, then when FEMA came in, they took a look at it, and they came in and they went through it quickly. I mean, it was full of water and all kinds of yucky stuff, and the decision was made fairly quickly that the school was totaled. And so it didn't take long for that to get through. So then the next step then, that got to be a tougher battle to get that approved to build a new hospital. We fought, for 6 weeks. And we were lucky enough that because of what happened up and down the Red River, President Clinton came, James Lee Witt, he was the FEMA director, and he came up to Crookston, and luckily the city of Ada was able to get a meeting with him. And so then it took about another month, and then they finally came through and decided that, yep, you're right, you need a new hospital, you need a new nursing home. And so between the city, FEMA, the state of Minnesota, new school, new hospital, a new nursing home, new clinic, it's a great improvement. Over the years, I think the dikes have been rebuilt. I think this last time now is probably about the 4th time. And this time it's a nice, secure dike. It's good when people say, well, the water doesn't get that high. Couldn't you just take a little off? And no, we're not gonna. We're gonna leave it up high. And so the city did a fine job.
I think it's important that we do history so our children can learn what happened, what we went through, and how we helped each other. We didn't wait.
Time went by, and next thing you know, the grass was green, and we were all worried about what was happening upriver, up in Grand Forks, and so on. So it wasn't just us that went through a lot of devastation. So
it's more than just water and weather. It's people, and there's countless people who did things that were amazing. They were ordinary people doing amazing things. This is a story about people, and it's our story. And that's why it needs to be preserved.